Flock cameras have come under scrutiny after a Florida cop used it to stalk his ex-wife 717 times. Ferrari sold the first Luce for millions and millions of dollars, and Lamborghini has reacted to Porsche, saying that they will be bringing back the manual gearbox. My name's Alex Harrington. This is a podcasty thing we're going to be doing more and more on this channel. Let's get into the first story. And that is the flock camera stalking case. A Florida cop used the same license plate cameras meant to catch criminals around the USA to stalk his ex-wife. This happened 717 times over 2 years, and that's pretty crazy. Look, Flock has been coming under a lot of pressure over the US. People don't want their data to be tracked. They don't want their cars to be tracked. So let's first of all just talk about what the Flock company actually is. It's an Atlanta-based company founded in 2017. It operates more than 120,000 automated license plate readers across the United States, and it has contracts with over 1,200 law enforcement agencies in 40 states, plus HOAs, neighborhood watch groups. It's a massive thing. These cameras are watching. And basically what they're for, they're supposed to be to watch and track criminals, people who are doing the wrong things. But as is the nature of the beast, they pick up the make and model, the number plates. They pick up a lot of data on every car that is viewed by them, every car that drives past them. And using this data, people with access to the system can track a car across a state, across the country even. And as you're aware now, this has come under a lot of scrutiny. People aren't happy about this because the data is being fed into a system, and the system is being used sometimes for the wrong means. And this is just one of several examples of this happening. Christopher Goodson, Haines City Police Department in Florida. Over more than 2 years, he tracked his ex-wife's vehicle using Flock. There's usually an audit requirement to get access to this data. He fabricated things called search justifications, and that is basically a reason they give to the system to allow them to access the data. He just made this up. He put in things like road rage, narcotics, assault cases that never actually existed, and the system allowed him to access this data. He was arrested. He forfeited his badge, and he's now facing 2 felony charges. This isn't the only time this has happened. Earlier this month, 46 law enforcement officers across the US were accused of misusing Flock cameras for unauthorized tracking, including the stalking of wives, girlfriends, ex-wives. And this month alone, a Sarasota officer was also suspended for a similar surveillance misuse. And this has sparked protests. It sparked online backlash, social media backlash. We've all seen it. People are not happy that this sort of data is being used. So, Flock and police departments and states are now under more and more pressure to either protect this data. I don't believe they can ever do that myself. Look at how AI is allowing data to be not manipulated, but to be organized and to be used so easily and so quickly. There are now more and more systems in place to stop officers doing this. So, for example, there will be monthly audits in after this specific case. But even then, there's no way to fully trust that this data is being used properly. And this is something that the UK has struggled with. We've had speed cameras across the UK for years and years and years. And they are automatic number plate recognition cameras, which means they have your number plate as soon as you drive past, and therefore the number plate's attached to an address. You can track where the car is going, but you can also send a speeding ticket, to our doors. Haines City has responded. The police chief said the department has mandated quarterly audits of all camera searches. Quarterly audits, that's once every 3 months. That's pretty crazy. Now, obviously, critics will remain skeptical that self-reported internal oversight can catch this kind of abuse. Trust in the police is arguably falling. Are people going to trust that they can properly audit something like this when audits are already supposed to happen and they're not working? So, look, the cameras did exactly what they were meant to do. There is nothing wrong with the way the system works. It is purely how we manipulate that system. But the question is, leave your answer down in the comments. I'm interested to know what you think. The question is this too far? Is the state, is Flock collecting too much data on us? Even if we're not doing anything wrong, why should we allow that data to be collected, the state, the police, to know our movements when we're not under surveillance, we're not being watched for any reason? Yes, we've got nothing to hide, but does that mean we still don't want to hide our movements? I don't know. Let me know down in the comments. I'm really interested to know what you think about this. This is a huge story, so it's something that MotorBiscuit will be exploring a lot over the coming months. Now, another thing that's come under scrutiny, the Ferrari Luce, the EV, the first EV from the company. We all saw the renders. We all saw the car and its release early this year. It's not exactly a looker. I think the issue is that it could be made by any brand. It could look Chinese. It could look like a Kia. It could look like maybe a Ford. It almost looks like an old Ford Escort, doesn't it, coming from an Englishman? It's now become the most expensive EV ever sold at auction. And the question is, does that mean anything? Does that mean the car's a success? I don't know. How much then? $40 million at Monterey Car Week. $40 million. Let's talk about the car. It was first unveiled May 2026. And it tanked the Ferrari shares. The value of the company dropped massively because fans of it, people who had bought into the brand, stakeholders of all sorts, they didn't like what they saw. And they didn't like maybe the direction that the company was looking to move in. Ferrari's own leadership has said they're pleased with the backlash, treating the controversy as not a negative thing, but as engagement. I think that is maybe the issue with the modern world. But yeah, despite the criticism, reports say the Luce has been selling well in markets like China, which I'm not overly surprised about. And they have reached their sales targets, which is another interesting thing. But look, Ferrari built its own motors. The battery pack is Ferrari's own, as is the active chassis system. It's a dedicated EV platform for the Luce. They did not drop another company's battery, another company's existing powertrain into the car. That really would have done it. The auction results. It was done by RM Sotheby's during the Monterey sale. The car, Chassis Zero, was the first production chassis off the line, and it's identified with a dedicated plaque. Obviously, the car's quite special. Now, whether it's special in the right way, that's not for me to decide. But it was built through Ferrari's tailor-made bespoke customization program. Had one-off semi-gloss paint. It shifts from green to violet, depending on the light. Lamar metallic leather interior. And it was the first time a Luce interior has moved away from the standard black. Dedicated wheels, bespoke white brake calipers, and the prancing horse logo set against optical white. It was offered without reserve, and because it was for charity, the buyer's premium was waived. It was estimated to be sold for over 1.1 million, and like I said, it was sold for an unbelievable $40 million. So, from what I've read, 100% of the proceeds go to the Ferrari Foundation. This is a huge charitable contribution. Obviously, charitable contributions can be offset against tax anyway, so it's already a huge win. But it is the Ferrari Foundation, and that helps things like education around Italy, helps children. It's a huge, brilliant, really brilliant charity. So it is scheduled for delivery in 2027, Q1 of 2027. That's a long time, but the car's going back to Maranello for final prep. So that is the most expensive electric car ever sold at auction, and the most expensive automotive charity lot ever sold at auction too. It also makes it RM Sotheby's single top result of the entire week. And we know what Monterey Car Week is like. It is a huge week for sales. It's a huge week for cars. Monterey has a habit of selling things for a lot of money. Last year, the Daytona SP3 sold for $26 million, again for the Ferrari Foundation. And that was, at the time, the most expensive new car ever sold at auction. Then a unique LaFerrari Aperta sold for $10 million in 2017. That was a dedicated Maranello charity sale for the Italian earthquake relief. The number climbs every single year. So, I mean, it's quite a climb this year. 40 million, that's quite a climb. Look, it's going to do a lot for charity. I don't think it's going to do anything for the car. People still don't really like it. But look, they've sold all the cars they've made. It's reached the target. Will that mean Ferrari keeps going with EVs? Yes. If there's a market, then they totally will. I think it's an SUV of any brand, isn't it? If an SUV can be a cash cow, allowing Ferrari or allowing any brand to keep going with what they're good at, then I can't see anything wrong with that at all. Especially if the EV also offsets carbon and the other crap, basically created by the vehicles they sell. You know, Aston Martin built and sold the Signet to average out their portfolio's carbon emissions. It all helps, doesn't it? So maybe we shouldn't complain so much about the Luce. Maybe, in fact, we should celebrate the fact that the Luce will allow Ferrari to keep doing what they're good at. Ferrari wasn't the only Italian brand making a few headlines this week. No, Lamborghini has reacted to Porsche saying yes to the manual gearbox. Lamborghini has said no. So, it was revealed August 13th at, again, Monterey Car Week. The manual 6-speed returns to the 911 Carrera S in North America. I'm very jealous, like I could afford it anyway. And this badges the 911 Carrera S with the MT package. When the Carrera S moved to the 992.2 generation, it launched with the 8-speed PDK gearbox. We know the PDK gearbox is one of the best on the market, but there was no manual option. Only the Carrera T and the GT3 variants kept a stick shift. They've now gone back on that decision, specifically for North America, like I said. 473 horsepower, 3-litre twin-turbo flat-6, curb weight just 3,327 pounds for the coupe. Rear-wheel drive only. There will be no all-wheel drive with a manual, which, fine. And it'll come with the same 6-speed gearbox already used in the Carrera T. Available as coupe or cabriolet, it will be priced from, wait for it, coupe, $167,000, $100, and $181,000 for the cabriolet, plus an over $2,000 delivery fee. The CEO of the company has actually said it's down to the overwhelming demand from the customer. Now, this is interesting, isn't it? Because the market for a long time has actually been pushed towards an automatic gearbox, especially in the US, and then the UK followed in those footsteps. The percentage of manual gearboxes on the road is reducing each year, but it's become a bit of a delicacy. When something becomes rare, more people want it. So it's interesting to know that Porsche can see that in their marketing, in the market research they're doing. Lamborghini, however, they're not so optimistic about this. Talking with Car Buzz at Monterey, Stephen Winkleman, who is the CEO and chairman, he was asked about Lamborghini's plans to bring back a manual, and he said no, there are no plans right now. He stands by the idea that demand for the stick shift is very low. Even back when it was still offered in the Gallardo, Murcielago era, two of the greatest cars to ever come from that company. And he sees a manual more as a nostalgic or maybe even collectible part of the car, a collector's item. He said actually comparable to how people now treat combustion engines, which is very interesting. He called it the last of a kind rather than something that a real driver demands. Now, he didn't fully rule it out for the future, but he did not commit to anything of the kind. He was also asked directly about Lamborghini's current hybrid powertrains, and could they even mechanically support a manual gearbox? And once again, he gave no definitive answer, which makes you wonder whether they are potentially looking into it. We have seen manual gearboxes on electric cars already. Now, everything is currently electronically shifted. So Huracan comes exclusively with a 7-speed DCT. Aventador Again, a 7-speed automated manual. The Revuelto uses an 8-speed DCC. Even the Urus, which, well, I suppose you'd assume that to use an automatic gearbox, that uses an 8-speed torque converter. But Lamborghini's own heritage, it's funny, they have a strong line of amazing, incredible manual cars. The first mid-engine supercar, the 1971 Miura SV, had the manual gearbox, and Winkleman himself has run the company through the time of the Gallardo and the Murcielago. They came with a manual option. The same week, the same show, Lamborghini unveiled the Revuelto SV, which is the most powerful production car ever. Naturally aspirated 6.5 litre V12, plus a 3-axial flux electric motor hybrid system, around 1,050, 1,065 horsepower, depending on the source, and over 1,000 pound-foot of torque. 0 to 62 mile per hour comes in about 2.4 seconds. Now, it's only limited to 1,963 units, which is a nod to Lamborghini's founding year, and it starts at $741,000. As you'd expect, only comes with an 8-speed DCT gearbox. And I think, look, you look at that price, and Lamborghini is doing something interesting. They're saying, okay, we'll make more expensive cars, more special cars, and yes, the sales figures will drop, but the margin on these cars will be larger because of their rarity, because of how special they are. And they're saying, as sale figures drop, revenue actually increases. He described a pyramid strategy. Volume models like the Urus, blah, 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 they fund the business. Like I said with the Luce, Ferrari's doing a very similar thing. Porsche, they did the same thing with the Cayenne. And now the Macan. They are using these cash cows to fund what they're really good at, what they really want to be doing. So these SVs, the few one-offs, they carry the real value for the brand. I mean, look, we'd all love to see a manual in some of these cars, but to be perfectly honest, they may be too powerful to look. I don't know if I'd want to be using a manual clutch in some of these cars. They're scary powerful. But the other question to ask is actually, are they doing this because they can't afford to put a manual gearbox in? They can't afford to develop a manual gearbox for their cars when they're not selling a high enough volume to warrant it. Porsche sells a large volume of cars. Lamborghini isn't necessarily doing that. So maybe, yes, they're saying that the market isn't there and that they will keep pushing automatic gearbox technology. But maybe it's a budget thing. Maybe they purely can't afford to develop these manual gearboxes to put into their cars because the return on investment just purely isn't high enough. So I've a big question for you, and please comment down below, like and subscribe as you're down there. Which brand has read it right? Which brand will come out on top with this? Is it Porsche, who are looking to bring the manual gearbox back? Or do you think Lamborghini is right in saying, you know what, we don't need the manual gearbox anymore? What would you prefer to drive? Let me know that as well. Look, while you're down there, like I said, please like and subscribe. Hopefully we'll do a few more bits where I just talk to the camera like this, and we can get some interviews and do something exciting. So thank you so much for watching. I've been Alex Harrington. See you in the next one.